Hello, folks, and welcome to this tropical system short summary. We are going to be going over the 1991 Bangladesh cyclone in this video. You may have heard this thing being called a number of different names before. This is referred to as Cyclonic Storm CS, Bay of Bengal, that's BOB, number one or number two. The same two numbers here are referencing the same system, weirdly enough. And what to make things even more complicated, of course, is that there is also a CSBOB number two slash number three as well that struck the same region just a month later, which we'll get into a little bit more at the very end here. So, of course, things have to be complicated. According to the Marines, they called this thing Cyclone Marion. I don't know why. And according to the Times, this was Cyclone Gorky. I also don't know why. I couldn't find a single thing on why either of those two last names are a thing. They just are. Anyways, I digress. Names are weird. We're going to leave it alone. Systems weren't even named at this point by the IMD, so whatever. This system first formed, or at least classed as a depression, on the 24th of April and became a cyclonic storm, CS, just the very next day. By the 27th, this thing is now a very severe cyclonic storm, that is VSCS, with estimated winds of 89 miles per hour. That is around high Category 1 equivalents now, close into Category 2. Now, at this point, the southwesterlies that are in the region, those are aloft winds, help accelerate the storm's movement as well as help increase its wind speeds. This thing becomes a super cyclonic storm by the 29th, with estimated 1 minute sustained wind speeds of 160 miles per hour, 3 minute estimated to be around 140, 145, with the JWST estimating a minimum pressure of 898 millibars, but the IMD, that stands for Indian Meteorological Department, estimating a minimum pressure of 918 millibars. So it has to be somewhere in between there. Later on the same day, the 29th, this thing makes landfall 55 kilometers to the south. That's 35 miles. The south of Chittagong, Bangladesh. Chittagong is also known as Chittagong. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Sorry. With estimated 1 minute wind speeds of 145 miles per hour. Very soon after landfall, though, we're talking like a day, this thing was destroyed by the Chittagong Hills region, a very, very mountainous area. As we all know, or as you should know here, typhoons, cyclones, hurricanes, whatever you want to call them, tropical systems hate two things: sheer and mountains. And this thing encountered mountains, so it died, but not before leaving a monstrous amount of damage in its wake. More than 138,000 people lost their lives from the system, with it causing an estimated $1.7 billion in damage. This thing produced a 20-foot storm surge on top of the already 18-foot tall high tide that was already happening when this storm struck. This cyclone destroyed an estimated 1 million homes and damaged most of the IAF, that means Indian Air Force, not Israeli, this is the Indian Air Force's aircraft. A good thing, more or less, did come from this thing, though: Operation Sea Angel. This was a joint effort from multiple nations, although at first it was 15 ships and 2,500 men from the US that were actually returning home from the Gulf War and were rerouted to Bangladesh to help relief operations. Technically, Operation Sea Angel was a thing after this, with more than 4,000 men and more than 3,000 tons of supplies from this operation, which saved no fewer than 25,000 lives. So, at least a more or less good thing coming out of this whole thing, with Operation Sea Angel being the largest by sea relief effort ever to date. That is insane and honestly pretty cool. Like that goes to show when people help people, good stuff happens. That's crazy. I could have never guessed. Anyways, cyclonic storm BOB number 2, also known as number 3, struck this exact same region nearly exactly a month later. Thankfully, this thing was much lesser in strength, only just causing further damage and hampering relief efforts, of course, just to make things more complicated for the people on the ground. The 91 Bangladesh cyclone is by 3 minute sustained wind speeds, the seventh most intense in the entire basin, and by pressure, the second most intense, that being when you use the IMD's 918 millibar. Even with the 898, if I'm not mistaken, that is still slightly beaten out, I want to say. But this strength of storm is very rare in the North Indian Basin because there is not as large an area for storms to form. Usually, it does indeed take a while, even for rapid intensification, for intensification to actually even start. The system essentially just needs to get into the right waters, which is exactly what this thing did, which normally the North Indian Basin doesn't do very good at, thank goodness. It normally does not have super exclusive conditions for stuff. That's more like in the Gulf of Mexico and in the West Pacific, where you see rapid intensification happen. But in here, it definitely took place. A good thing has come out of the system, though, if you count this as a good thing, is that thousands of elevated storm shelters have been built following this system. Some had been built after the 1971 Bola cyclone. However, not enough, of course, and this was found out the hard way with this system 20 years later. So now, more than 30 years later, these storm shelters have proven very, very effective. Of course, just like with a tsunami, you want to be above the water with systems like these, and underground shelters are not going to do you as much good as you think. Water wants to flow down into your basement, not up. Of course, gravity, crazy. With that, folks, though, that is all that I have for the 91 Bangladesh cyclone. I hope that you all learned something from this video. I certainly did while researching. I had no idea that Operation Sea Angel was a thing until this video, until I researched this. I had like vaguely heard of something similar, but not something like this. That's awesome. Again, I hope you all learned something. I did while researching. I hope that you all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you all so much for watching.